Welcome to Spotlight Sessions, where we shine a
What's
light
your
on
story?
incredible impact. What does accessibility mean to you?
What's your mission?
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Spotlight Sessions. My name is Avital. I'm today's host, and I'm joined by Melanie Taddeo, who is the founder and also a DEI Specialist at Gaining Vision. How are you, Melanie?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me, Avital.
Yeah, of course. How are you today?
Wonderful.
Great. It's so great to see you and be here with you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, for sure. I acquired my disability at the age of 21 when I suffered a massive stroke that left me completely paralyzed on the left side and legally blind. Prior to this, I knew nothing about disability and my life was turned upside down. So for me, it was a huge transition. You can only imagine learning to walk again, talk again, and gaining my independence back. But also navigating the world as someone who was totally blind. This change would have brought a lot of people down, but myself, it inspired me. It pushed me forward and helped me achieve my goals, becoming the first legally blind teacher to graduate in Ontario and starting a charity, Connect for Life. But over the last 10 years, my life has evolved, and really I've started to specialize in diversity and inclusion, looking at it from a disability and accessibility lens.
Definitely. So I'm curious to know a little bit about how education comes into that play, because you do have a background in education, and I'm sure you spend every day educating different groups of people. So how have you found that link to be?
Well, that's a great question. And it's funny, when I first went to Teachers College, they automatically said, oh, you'll be teaching children with special needs. And I was really offended by that. In fact, I wanted to teach everybody. But the reality is that's where my passion was. So I specialized in special education. Now, that just meant that I was going to learn how to best accommodate my students to help them be successful in their learning. That didn't mean that I was a huge component of special segregation or anything like that. In fact, I'm a huge I would say, the word I'm looking for, champion of inclusive education. So making sure that every child feels included just as they are, with the right supports and accommodations that they need to be successful and to be included.
Yeah, that's so important. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Gaining Vision and also a little bit about your day-to-day there?
Absolutely. So Gaining Vision is a brand new company, but it's exciting. It's where we help individuals, companies, organizations, and schools understand and embrace inclusion. What that means is that we provide expertise, workshops, trainings, and consulting services to ensure that companies understand the benefits and values of inclusion in hiring people with disabilities. So I work with management, I work with HR departments, helping them create an inclusive environment so that every employee with a disability feels included, part of it, and has an even playing ground. But this also includes having to train other individuals and employees that may not have disabilities about working with people with disabilities. So a lot of it is, debunking the myths and misconceptions about working with people with disabilities and featuring them for their abilities and gifts and talents. So a day-to-day would be lots of virtual meetings and conducting workshops across the globe. We work with people in South Africa, Canada, and the US, ensuring that they have the tools that they need to help create an inclusive workplace. Many companies have committed to the United Nations Charter of Rights for Persons with Disabilities, but they're not sure of the steps they need to take to become inclusive. So that's where we come in. So it could be providing that workshops and trainings, writing accessibility plans or diversity inclusion plans for the company, and working with the management all the way down to the employees with disabilities. Whatever the needs they need, we help provide it.
That's really amazing. And how do you feel that this type of work is received by organizations, whether that be or people from the organizations, from the CEO and the C-suite all the way down to employees?
It's interesting. It depends on the management, the executives. If they have a culture of inclusion, it's easier because the company is built around that. If they are hesitant or resistant to it, then it's a fight. But so far, most of them have been open to the dialogue. Not 100% sure how to do it, and that's where we come in. But again, everybody wants to be, whether it's compliant, check the box, or they really see the value in hiring individuals with disabilities. So we get all types, but it's an interesting conversation to have, and I'm passionate about ensuring that inclusion is part of every company's makeup across the globe. So even if it's going to take 25, 30 years, I will still continue the fight.
Right. And that's what's important. I feel like making sure that those doors are open to have the conversations, whether they're uncomfortable or, people don't necessarily, it's not something that they would have on a day-to-day. It's really important to make sure that the door is open and that people feel comfortable to have the conversation, to ask questions. Because at the end of the day, it's really important, just to educate, everybody and be inclusive. So are there any specific accomplishments that you're most proud of through Gaining Vision, whether that being like, working with a specific client or, something that you've accomplished?
So, we're just starting out, but I will say I'm very proud of the connections that we've made in South Africa. There's a lot of big companies there, and the government are very open to these dialogues. So we've had several meetings in the month of September, and we're actually going in January in person to have these in-person meetings to carry the conversation on. They're open, they're curious, and they're coming from a place of curiosity and respect, and I'm very excited about those. But again, here in Canada, working on a lot of accessibility plans and diversity and inclusion plans for companies here.
Yeah, that's really interesting, especially given, South Africa's history, coming in and being a DEI specialist and expert in this field and being able to have those conversations. So that's definitely interesting, something I'm sure, that our listeners and I definitely would love to hear a little bit more about as you progress.
I'd be happy to come back and share.
Definitely. So what does accessibility mean to you? This is a question that is very broad, but we really do love to ask this question because people tend to give such different responses to what it means to them, as an individual.
It's interesting because accessibility's definition has nothing to do with people with disabilities, and I always laugh when I have this conversation with people and they're like, of course it does. I'm like, no, it just means having access or entry to a place or a service. And they're like, but that's for people with disabilities. I'm like, no. So for me, really, truly, it's ensuring everyone, despite their ability, background, sexual orientation, has access to the programs, services, and facilities that they so choose to access. Ensuring that we are having conversations about ensuring that every piece of information is accessible to people at their request.
Yeah, it's very important. And if you had one message to the business community, what would that be?
My biggest thing is that if you're not accessible, you're missing out on a huge market of individuals, their networks. It's in the world, there's 1 billion people with disabilities and $500 billion spending power. Because it's not just individuals with disabilities, but their caregivers, their service providers, everybody in their network. You're missing out on all that money and spending power for your companies if you do not have an accessible company, whether it's online presence or even at a storefront. So the more accessible you are, the more likely you are to be able to make some more money. So dive into that market and talk to individuals with disabilities and what accessibility means to them, because they're the experts.
Definitely. And if anybody would like to get in contact with you and get involved, what would be the best way to do so?
So our website is gainingvision2020.com, and the email is gainingvision2020@gmail.com. And definitely reach out. We're on all social media platforms. We've got Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and we are building, of course, our LinkedIn, etc. So it takes time as it's a new business, but please reach out. We're happy to have conversations. We're happy to talk about our services, as well as how we can help other companies learn about inclusion and the importance of being an inclusive company.
Definitely. Well, we will make sure to have, all of your contact information within the show notes. So if anybody has any questions, they can reach out. If they want to get involved, they can reach out. And Melanie, it really was such a pleasure to speak with you today. I know that you're going to be doing great things just, by this conversation and what I know about you, from the past. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Thanks so much, Avital. It was great seeing you and chatting with you.
Thank you.